mindful communication and showing up as your best, because this is such an important thing for all of us. As you can hear from the panel so far, and also from our future productivity sessions, how you communicate can really affect how you are portrayed and how others can thrive or not thrive. And so instead of doing a top-down lecture on how to do this, I wanted to assemble with our team just a diverse panel. When I say diverse, in terms of job, in terms of life experience, and in terms of just how they see the world. And I cannot be more excited to have this panel. Let me start off from the left side, and I'll start with the right side. So Celina Belizan is an international leadership coach. Seriously, look her up. What she's doing on the leadership end and the types of work that she's doing, this what I call holistic kind of way of looking at leadership, it's truly just inspiring. I think it's the new way we should look at life coaching and career coaching and things, even in that category related. Dr. Malika Gupta, she is just a well-known immunologist, amazing doctor, and one of the sharpest minds I've ever met in the medical industry. One of the advantages of doing Peak Mindfulness, I get to interact with a lot of smart people. I'm not smart, I just know smart people. I literally believe that. And every time I talk to her about where medicine is going, it's just really, really cool. My next person is a personal mentor, good friend, someone who I can say was an early introduction to me in terms of introducing me to why I need to incorporate mental wellness, is David Meltzer. We have a treat with him. I mean, he is he's a best-selling author multiple times. He has one of the top podcasts in the country, if not the world, dealing with sports, business, and life. And he has a TV show in partnership with Entrepreneur and on how to pitch your business. And, and he's just probably one of the most traveled, whether in person or virtual, keynotes you'll meet. He's got an award actually for being one of the most prominent kind of keynote speakers. I'm telling you all this not to brag. I'm telling about him. I'm telling you this just to share with you that, like the other two, this is just going to be one of the most unique panels. I've done a lot of panels I've never done a panel on mindful communication. And it's like one of those things we need to talk about. It's so finally cool to finally dive into it. Here's some things that you will hopefully learn today from this. And again, I just want to remind everyone that there will be recordings provided by sometime next week at the latest. And so if you need to leave for a second, or if you caught off on hearing something, don't worry, you will get the recordings. And I highly encourage you to listen to them when you get them. So you're going to learn the best ways to communicate with anyone you interact with to produce the best outcomes for both parties. I call this win-win communication. This next part is probably something we're going to spend most of the time on. In fact, I'm telling the panelists right now, I'm going to ask you all this in the beginning part. How do you create daily self-care habits and routines that can help push you towards success? And of course, a very popular topic, which we actually heard a lot, especially in the angel investment panel, advice for leading diverse teams, whether you're in a remote or in-person climate. So without further ado, I'm going to stop the screen share and bring our panelists up. So can everyone on the panel please turn your video and audio on, please? That would be great.
Ash, it won't let me start my video.
Yeah, mine either.
Oh, there you are.
We're good now.
It won't let me, Ash.
Oh.
Keep saying can't start video, host has stopped.
What's up, Dave?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Not that anybody needs to see my face. My voice is much better.
There you go. I think you're co-host now. You should be fine.
Oh, you co-hosted me. There you go. I took the time. Look at that. I even get the official backdrop and you weren't going to put me
I
on.
can't get mine. I tried. Oh, wait. Hang on.
How do I do that?
I tried.
Wow, this is mindful communication at its finest. Wow, I love this. Everyone's all calm and cool. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry about it. We can get started. Don't worry about it. It's all good. So before I start, thank you all again. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves too. If there's anything I missed, I'll start. So when I ask questions, it's going to be in this order so we can make this fluid. Dave, Malika, and then Celina. So David, anything you want to share about your background that I did not get to mention that's relevant to this?
Only one thing. My reason I'm here, my mission in life is to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. So nice. I'm looking for 1,000 people to empower 1,000, to empower 1,000. Simple math, 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million. million times a thousands a billion. I'm trying to create a collective consciousness of abundance and happiness so people can see the world with the mindset, heart set, and the collective consciousness that I have, and hopefully empower others to do the same. And so I do free trainings, free books, exercises, guides. Just reach out to me directly. It's all free, and it's here to empower you for the best disease and virus in the world, happiness. It's spread by witnessing it, and it strengthens your immune system. Try it out.
Oh. All right. That was awesome. So can I take it from strengthen your immune system?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess what I would add is what I'm proud of is the goal of education on a daily basis, if possible, and that kind of works into everything that we're going to be talking about. I'm a true hybrid of allergist and immunologist, inside to outside, and a major focus right now in my career on generational immunology. So taking a mom and understanding what's going on with their kid and understanding where everything came from, like the grandma.
That's great. How about you, Selina?
I actually loved my intro. I thought it was wonderful. So we can go ahead and get started. I can't wait.
Okay. So let's get started. Dave, really, I think I'm going to ask you this. What are your self-care habits? What can we learn from you? What are things you've learned from others? Tell us your routines every day, please.
Yeah, first, have 2 routines. I think one of the biggest progressions in my life is I realized that shit happens. And so I'm very anal retentive OCD with my routine. I wake up at 4 a.m., but my routine actually, my tomorrow starts today. So I believe that I get 8 hours of exercise on average every night. And the warm up for that exercise is a wind down routine. It's called sleep. It's when I have the clearest connection to the greatest source of light, love, and lessons, where I can keep my ego on check and be able to actually plateau and grow to start at a higher frequency tomorrow, instead of rolling a big rock up to the top of the hill like the myth of Sisyphus, if you read Camus, just have it roll down in the morning. So I'm a plateau and grow person through routine. Set your schedule and routine daily, but always have an adaptable routine, which is based off of your non-negotiables. So for me, I put time as a variable in there. So for me, a minimum of an hour a day on my health. And that's a recent change over the last 3 years. I've been blessed to do very well and ask my wife, hey, what can I do for you? You know, we've lived through a lot together, especially you, because she's married to me. And what can I do? And she said, simply take care of yourself. You're putting your family first all the time. You're putting the activity you get paid for first all the time behind your family. You're not taking care of yourself. And if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. So minimum of an hour a day on my health, minimum of 30 minutes with my wife, minimum of 30 minutes with my 10-year-old son, minimum of 2 minutes a day with my 3 teenage daughters. I asked for 5, they gave me 2. And a minimum of a minute a day. I believe 2 minutes a day in anything is worth more than 2 hours on a Saturday. So meditation, health, consistency is the way the conscious continuum works. One real just quick factor about happiness and mental health: your most intimate relationships, they only want to know 4 things about you. And we don't communicate them effectively and often enough. So this has really helped me with my mom, for example, where everyone probably, I could make billions of dollars, I always say, just starting a practice, a life coach practice called Mommy Issues, and I'd get 90% of the world subscribing if I could teach them how to get over mommy issues. Well, here's what I would teach you. These 4 things in all intimate relationships. 1, everybody just wants to know you're healthy. Your closest relationships, that's their number 1 wish for you from them, I promise you. The second is happy. So the third is that you appreciate them, meaning that they add value to your life and you acknowledge that. And then you love them. There's a truth between you, a love, a bond. And so if you can communicate to the people closest to you for a minimum of a minute a day that you, number 1, are healthy yourself, you can't give what you don't have. 2, you're happy yourself. 3, that you appreciate them. And 4, that you love them. I promise you, if you do that every day to the most important people and closest communications you have, you'll be happy. And then have your own daily practices. For me, I have 5 daily practices in my routine. 1 is to take inventory of my own values and not be afraid of being a hypocrite. meaning I change my mind, I'm growing, I don't know what I don't know. I know I'm just a slice of totality in between infinity and limitlessness. 2, I ask for help. I live with radical humility, 2 words I put next to my bed. I have no problem giving. In fact, I used to give to receive. Now I receive so I can give. And the best question I ask in person, on the phone, via email or media is just simply, do you know anyone that could help me? I see everyone as a sponsor or a power sponsor in my life. 3, I'm a student. I have a mathematical equation of luck. What I pay attention to and what I give intention to, what I think, say, do, believe, unconscious competencies that I have in personality traits, characteristics, obsessions, and addictions, aggregated together, attention plus intention equals coincidence. That's the mathematical equation. That's why everyone always in my life has said, oh, you're so lucky. I get it because I have a mathematical formula to get there. I study things that way. 4, be present, do it now. Very simply, the difference between happy people and unhappy people, happy people get shit done. So 100% of the things you do now get done. So get them done. Ask yourself, can I do it now? If you can, you'll save twice as much time, exponentially be more statistical successful, and be able to align it with your values every day that you're taking inventory of. And then finally, my lifelong practice, which I'm not as good at as I will, I'm only spending minutes and moments, but practice ending fear. Primal fears, Freudian fears, secondary fears, need to be right, offended, separate, inferior, superior, anxious, frustrated, angry, any of those needs that you've wasted your life and energy and money and resources and relationships with. Simply practice ending it by being a ferocious Buddha. 1, identify when you're in fear. 2, don't try to resist it. Don't try to accelerate in the wrong direction. Simply stop, breathe like a Buddha, through, over your eyes, out through your mouth. Get to center. Neutral is your highest frequency, by the way, because that's clearing the interference or corrosion between what you're already connected to. And being in neutral, then you can roll in the right trajectory. Remember this, and I'll pass it on to Malika. Very simple. When you are in ego-based consciousness, you're edging goodness out of your life. Your mind, your body, and your soul are on fire. Everybody knows when you're on fire. Just stop, drop, and roll.
Wow.
How am I supposed to follow that?
I know. I was about to say that. Not you, Malika. Like, how could anyone follow? That was amazing. Thank you for that mindful knowledge drop. Wow, that was amazing. No, thank you. Seriously. And
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. One thing I liked about what Dave said, I mean, there's many tidbits that he just said, but one thing that came to my mind was I loved how he brought up ferocious Buddha. And the reason why is because I use a different acronym. I call myself a mindful hustler. Like, I'm ambitious. I'm as ambitious as anyone you'll meet, but I'm mindful about it. And I think being a ferocious Buddha is, like, in a way similar to that. So I love that acronym. I think that's the new level of mindfulness, I feel, especially for busy entrepreneurs and leaders, is to embrace that lion or that alpha side in you, but at the same time, do it with grace, do it with mindfulness, do it with kindness. You can be a kind, ambitious person. And so I'm glad Dave's message is there. Malika, are you on? I was trying to look for you, and if not,
I'm on.
You're on. Okay,
you're not letting me on video.
Oh, you're just listed as Zoom user. Hold on,
Oh.
let's fix that. There you go.
I'm a co-host now. All right.
Yep. All right.
Let's
Now
try again.
Let's have you do your thing.
Okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, that was brutal, Dave, because that is a really hard act to follow.
It's nice to see you. I miss you.
Likewise. I know it's been forever, right? Megan told me actually that you're going to be on this. It's a small world. Anyways, everything that you had to say was, as badass as can be. I have to say that. In terms of self-care, I'm going to take a different path. My journey for self-care actually just started probably a year and a half ago, and I've learned a lot. And so for someone who's science-oriented, I wanted objective data. And so one of the things that I did is read a lot. And so there are a couple authors I'll mention that I really like that sort of kind of fit into a health paradigm right now that kind of sets you up for success. So one, for the self-care piece, it's important that I keep promises to myself. So the night before, I'll list out 1 or 2 things that are really, really important to me. whether it's, you know, going for a bike ride with my kid or accomplishing, you know, writing a paper. And when I keep the promises to myself, I am maintaining and building integrity. And only when you have integrity in yourself can you offer that to everyone else. And so that sort of permeates through the job world, right? And it builds character, obviously, but it attracts the good things too. And Ash, I'm sure, is smiling right now because he's been on this journey with me. So, and I'm really appreciative for that. The second thing I would say, and this is totally cliche, but I'm gonna say it, is living in gratitude. So like Dave was talking about, finding value and meaning in the now, appreciating this this exact moment is huge. And that's not something that I was ever taught to do. But having that perspective is huge. And it completely creates an optimist out of people maybe that weren't optimists before. And you can attack any situation in the best possible way. Optimism, FDR would be like the best example, right? So polio and all the other trials and tribulations of his life didn't stop him from doing what he wanted to do. And he did everything with a smile. So it took him a long way. And so practicing gratitude in whatever form you want to do it is cliche, but really, really, really wonderful. And there's some great books on that that have good data. The third thing I would say is I do a weekly check-in with someone I'm really close with. So if it's a family member or a significant other, and the idea is that you take the time to reassess yourself and your like close personal relationships, things that you might want to ask about, or what are your three biggest concerns at this time, or what made you smile today. And so this is giving value and validation to the person that's in your life that's important to you, but it's also giving you perspective. And that's really important to keep reevaluating yourself so that you can grow. And then on this journey, Helen Fisher has been a really huge influence. So she's a biological anthropologist. And long story short, humans have one thing in common, many things in common, but one of the things that sort of permeates through time is the fact that the way the brain works is pretty much the same at the basic level. So neurotransmitters like dopamine and hormones like oxytocin play a huge role. And these are important in terms of appreciating the now, and also in terms of like bringing on the happy, kind of like what Dave was talking about. And so learning what types of things increase dopamine, like new experiences, certain challenges, trying something new, learning something new, and then what stimulates oxytocin. So those things, and I can always go into more detail at some point, are really important from the mind standpoint. And then there's the body. So from the inside out, as an immunologist, one of the biggest things right now is something called meta-inflammation. And meta-inflammation is essentially the molecular study of how the tiny nutrients and inflammatory molecules of the immune system actually, are related to what you eat, disease comorbidities, and sort of essentially epigenetics, meaning the genes that you're set up for, what gets turned on, what gets turned off. So you have a lot of control. And a huge part of self-care is knowing that you are in control of taking care of yourself. Sorry, that was probably really long.
No, that was great. There's no right or wrong answer. And again, what I love about this panel is the diverse experiences and professions. And thank you for those kind words earlier. Very impressed with just all the work that you're doing. And some really good knowledge there. So Selina, you are up. What are your kind of routines and programs that you recommend for your clients and things that you might do yourself?
Sure. So a big part of my work is around preparing for failure. And so a lot of these routines, a lot of the books we read, I probably try to learn every productivity hack, every morning routine. I've listened to every single book, tried so many different things. And finally, what I realized in my lifestyle and the lifestyle of the people that I work with, a lot of times it's just not going to happen. So you say you're going to do this certain morning routine, you say you're going to act a certain way. And so my self-care, I actually don't use that terminology at all. Maybe I need some more self-care, maybe that's why. But what I really started to learn as a parent and as somebody in, competitive environments and just in the real world where we're constantly getting things thrown at us left and right, what I started to think about was, how can I stay in my own lane, and how can I teach other people to stay in their own lane? And so by that, I mean that you're not at the mercy of what comes at you, that you're not constantly in reaction. And the ways in which we do that are, first is planning, like I said, planning for failure. And so you know where you are going to be at risk of your energy getting depleted, or getting going into an insecure mode and then spending 2 hours in procrastination. So all of those different ways that, as David mentioned, when your ego swoops in, all of those different times that your ego can swoop in, that's when you get depleted. And so that's what we have to be able to watch moment to moment to make sure that we're always making a conscious decision where we want to live. And so my tips for how to do that would be, I use mantras a lot. And by that, I mean, we have mantras prepared for those moments during your day, which are completely predictable, where you are at risk of going into ego, or you are at risk of your amygdala firing, you're at risk of going into fear or one of those modes. And so some of those are, very simple one is, and this is great for parents, is in the now, there's only wow. And it's so stupid. But if you're sitting around with your kids and you have this pressure, like, okay, be present. Okay, now really be present. Don't be on my computer. Don't be thinking about my phone. Don't be, okay, so now I'm present. And you realize, like, I'm not even present. All I'm doing is thinking about being present. You're already in judgment. So you're right back into ego. And so you just say that to yourself, in the now, there's only wow, and just find just something, anything. Sometimes it just takes touching somebody's skin or your own, or just sitting back and looking for that wow, because if you can't find the wow, then you're just not in the now and you're depleting yourself. Another mantra that I like is when you feel, I work a lot with with people, with coaches and people in sales, not sales, but influential positions. And when you feel that fear, the question to ask, or the mantra that I like, is, what am I trying to control? Because if you're trying to control something, then you're not going to connect. If you're trying to control something, you're in fear, you're in ego. So if you feel any of those feelings come up, you ask, control or connect? If you have a negative feeling, or even a negative feeling could be procrastination, or or laziness, or retreating, you're in ego. So figure out a way to connect. And then my last one, which is super straightforward, is to just carry around one of these in your back pocket. And every time you start to feel something come up, anything, do a little check mark on it. It will, just this simple act of this silly little check mark will start to not only continue your journey on awareness. If you're watching this, you probably are so hyper aware, but what it starts to do is starts to give you that decision point, which we'll build on at another time. But just doing that starts to interrupt your pattern, gets you out of the reactive centers of your brain into the emotional, out of the emotional centers of your brain into the language centers of your brain, and and it starts to create a new pattern. So those are my 3 non-traditional self-care tips to help you stay in your lane and have the energy and the excitement to go through your day and night and do the things you actually want to do.
Wow. Okay. I'm saying wow, not only because thank you for sharing all that, but wow, from like all 3 of you just dropped some amazing knowledge. And I kind of recapped a little about what Dave was talking about. I'm going to recap a few things that Malika had said and then what Celina had said. And then we're going to get into the next question, which is on dealing with diverse teams and mindful communication, the real crux of this panel, why we're doing this. And so Malika had talked about, keeping promises to herself, like for instance, taking a bike ride with her kid, living in gratitude, doing weekly check-ins. And she mentioned people like Helen Fisher. And then Celina had talked about some really cool stuff. I love that in the now it's only wow. And then the mantra, should I control or connect with the person in front of me? I think those are important things because when you are happy with yourself, when you have affirmations with yourself, when you self-believe in yourself, you will handle stress, you will handle diverse situations, whatever that may be, better, likely better, I should say. Nothing's always 100%. Why? Because you're comfortable with yourself. And when you're comfortable with yourself, you have the ability to, instead of throwing yourself in a situation, to be outside the situation. Instead of, being in the day-to-day, you're kind of like watching a movie. You're sitting back. You're the observer, not the fight or flight mode, which I loved what you said, Malika, about immunology and, how your body reacts, with inflammation. I'm not a doctor, but in my opinion, someone who's just a self-proclaimed biohacker, I would say that cortisol, increasing your level of cortisol, that fight or flight response mode, the more you get that, the more likely you're a stressed out person. The less control you are with levels of cortisol and the, fight or flight reactions, the more or less you can do that, the more at peace with yourself you could be, the more you could be an observer instead of being reactionary. And so that's why also from a medical standpoint, having you talk about inflammation and immunology is so key. So thank you for that. So let's dive into the next question. And again, I'll go with the same order. Dave, Malika, and Celina. Like when you guys coach or advise clients or patients, you, Malika, specifically that part, how do you deal with situations where someone is like saying to you, oh my goodness, and it's like a verbal vomit where they're just venting to you about the issues they're doing at their work, or their team players, or even at personal level, if they're like, I can't get stuff done because I'm working at home and I got a crazy spouse situation because we're both at home longer than needed, or we're seeing our kids more often because of the rules of the pandemic. So Dave, what do you say to these types of people?
Yeah, first, I'll address what most people worry about, which is uncertainty. And that one kills me because I always tell people, anyone out there, in fact, if you can tell me what's going to happen tomorrow, please call me because I know how to make billions of dollars and I'll give it all to charity. But if you know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, please call me. So uncertainty is a misnomer. It's a true diversion from what we should be focused in on, which is accelerated change. And part of that change can vary. It's not just remote working. There's an accelerated change that perhaps would be about 7 years of change in the last 7 months of all significant institutions around the world. It's the first time that we've ever had to consider as an entire species our own human existence altogether. So there's a lot of accelerated change. So what I tell people is, let's look within us, right? We can't find outside of us what we can't find inside of us. And if we're going to look inside of us, why don't we look at what we have control of? And so I spend a lot of time dealing with values of mindset. Everybody has control of their own mindset. And that mindset involves pain and ego and a variety of things. But very simply, I try to set their mindset to number one, gratitude, as you know, giving you perspective, as Malika said, being able to find the light, the love, and the lessons and everything. I let them know that, I have represented the biggest celebrities, athletes, and entertainers in the world, and billionaires, millionaires that I've surrounded myself. And the truth is that their life sucks just as much as yours. They're just capable of finding the light, the love, and the lessons in the suck. So live with gratitude. It will give you perspective. Pain is not a stop sign. Don't stop. Pain's an indicator. It's a turn signal. It's going to put you into a better direction. You're right where you're supposed to be, at the right way, at the perfect time. Now let's use the right mindset with gratitude to angle to something better, and then have faith that you'll end up somewhere better than that. The second one is forgiveness. So many people look outside of themselves for forgiveness. Look within, forgive yourself, and you can give forgiveness to others. Forgiveness will give you peace. We're talking about inflammation. Peace is the counteractive to inflammation. Live at peace, forgive yourself, and you'll forgive others. Accountability gives us complete control in a mindset. When we just ask ourselves two simple questions: what did I do to attract this to myself? And once again, what am I supposed to learn from it? Too many people right now in the pandemic, especially, are living in blame. They live in shame. They live in justification. If they simply would just ask themselves, what did I do to attract this to myself? And what am I supposed to learn from it? An entirely different perspective will be shared. And that will allow the inspiration, which is a duality. I have people focus, although they feel separate and they want to connect with the other people, either within their families, businesses, community, I have them first connect to what inspires them, to the greatest source of love, light, and lessons, to whatever that may be, their faith-based source: God, Jesus, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, Buddha. I don't know what it is, but you need to connect there first and allow it to come through you to the other people. So mindset would be the first thing. The second one is just your heart set. Understand your feelings. And you got to look internally at those feelings and address your feelings. You have control of your feelings. As I mentioned earlier, it's arguable when you talk to your daughters and your wife about it, but they are supposed to have control of their own feelings, not me. And then finally, those conscious continuum. Know consciously, subconsciously, and unconsciously exactly what you think, say, do, and believe, and how it affects or impacts the frequency that you put out, what you're truly attracting in your life. And so having them focus in on the inside to see what's outside with mindset, heart set, and that conscious continuum, that's what helps everyone connect, not only with each other, but with this great source of love, light, and lessons that I believe we're always connected to.
That's awesome. No, I'll tell you one of the reasons why I loved what David just said, everyone. One is, thank God that we're recording these, because there's some knowledge. Like, I'm going to really sincerely rehear this. And number two, regarding Dave's thing, I love how he talked about both the sound mind, sound body kind of situation. I think it's important to look at things from a holistic standpoint. I think, at first this was like a trendy word, like being holistic or whole this, whole that, whole living. I now think whole living is going to be the de facto. And I think one thing that this pandemic taught us is that it's not only about how your physical health, but it's also about how your mental health is. And also whatever you deem as spiritual health, which I love how Dave alluded to that too. So having that complete sound mind, sound body, mind, body, soul is the new level of wellness. And hearing from people like Dave on that, it totally reaffirms that. Malika, can you jump on again? I'm not sure why it seems your Zoom user. Oh, there you are. You keep popping off. All right, there you are. All right. So what is your, you deal with a lot of patients and you yourself own a business. What's your answer when you how do you deal with diverse situations, different kinds of communication? Like what do you recommend people to do? What should they do with themselves first? And I hope you like that little comment I made about inflammation and cortisol. Well, what are the things I always talk to you about, right?
Yes. So you're right. I like the way you described it as diverse situations. Doing what we do as physicians, we are privy to essentially like a deeper connection with people than is traditional, right? We get to really have the privilege of insight into really common stressors that we can pattern and then learn from our patients. So the connection is a really important piece. What do we do to prepare ourselves? I think the most important thing is the idea that you don't take on the mood of the room. So like you bring the mood, and the mood does not take over you. And that's a really, really hard thing to do. And I think it's one of the most stressful parts of our job as physicians. it is a learning process every day, because everyone has good days and everyone has bad days, but being pretty solid in yourself gives you an amazing coping mechanism in order to do what we have to do for patients, which is truly to decrease their stress response, right? To optimize the way their body works. So the immune system is set up for homeostasis, meaning everything kind of works together really, really well. And so in a perfect ecosystem or body, everything's doing what it's supposed to do. There's nothing in excess. There's nothing there's nothing to be wanted. And you've got this perfect machine. But things like stress, poor coping mechanisms, etc., will muck that up. So, be kind to yourself. One of the main things that we do is we help people organize. So I'm guessing you've heard of Stephen Covey's Urgent Important Matrix.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've actually made myself do every single day. So in the morning, and I have my kid do it too, we set up the matrix, and this helps us to be organized. It also, is part of the keeping promises to yourself and having integrity, and knowing that, what you do is valuable, not only for you, but for the accomplishments that you're making. Being organized decreases the anxiety and allows you to come to work and manage all the different personalities pretty seamlessly. I will say it makes a really, really, really big difference. You want to set yourself up for success in this way. And then the other thing I tell my daughter and try and live is surround yourself with people that you can learn from. Surround yourself with people that are different than you, better than you, because there's no end to becoming a better person, and learning about all the different ways in which you can get better. Don't condemn, don't argue, be introspective. A lot of echoes of what Dave said.
Cool. I do want to ask you one question about inflammation, because you brought that up. For those who don't, in your medical opinion, like, what are some ways from a, whatever you feel you're allowed to share, from a diet or routine, exercise, or even just anything mindfully that can help reduce inflammation? Because I want everyone to really, if you guys can Google one thing, I mean, there's many things to Google from this event, from this conversation, but what Malika said about inflammation is like, it's sort of tied to what David said about not just looking at things physically or externally, also looking at things from a internal thing, because inflammation starts from inside. And if your inside is not feeling good, it's going to affect how you look outside and how you act outside. Like, you might see sometimes where your face gets really puffy for no reason. That's inflammation. Or you might be irritable for no reason. Just, there's a chance it could be inflammation. So share a little more on that, please.
Sure. So the best way to explain what you're talking about is to know that everything's connected, right? Everything in your body is connected. Your skin, your hair, your diet, your sleep, your mood, the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you take in, how you metabolize medications, how you metabolize natural roots, herbs, etc. And then all of that is all linked to genetics. So inflammation is a really broad term. With the epidemic or the pandemic, what we've seen is a new focus on inflammation that's more acute. So looking at things like TNF alpha and IL-6, and sort of becoming really well acquainted with how your body goes from short-term inflammation to long-term inflammation, how those effects matter. When we want to control inflammation, there's a couple of things that we can do. One is the stuff that you're really good at, which is the mindfulness piece. And what I would say is everyone has a different way of being mindful. I think kind of finding your sweet spot is maybe like, I don't know, I needed someone like you, like you're my bud. And so I appreciated that. I learned that from you. With the body stuff, the concept of meta-inflammation, which is what I brought up before, is basically understanding, okay, these are the factors that play a role in overall inflammation. So for example, diet. With diet, we know that if you're missing, for example, certain heavy metals in your diet, then you're not going to process certain foods properly. And without good processing, you're going to increase inflammation. So simple things like making sure that you have adequate zinc levels, adequate copper levels, and not kind of taking supplements willy-nilly, but making sure that you have a really good baseline and a radar for following that. Because you can eat all the good food you want, but if you're missing that one key component, it's like you did nothing. So diets vary, and diets vary for a lot of reasons. Gender is one of them. So men and women are going to process foods a little bit differently. And also the way that the mood and the diet and hormones play a role is a really, really big thing. So with hormones, the things that we can control there that are important for inflammation include estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Estrogen and progesterone will often be found in contraceptives, whether they be oral or intrauterine. Testosterone is kind of like all the rage right now. So you may have seen the entire like shelf in like Rite Aid of like every single testosterone product known to man. And tell me if you can't hear me. The important thing to know is that those hormones play a role in inflammation through a different pathway than diet does. So the simple things you can control, again, diet, what your labs look like. So what's your baseline sodium, potassium, blood chemistry, heavy metals. What are your vitamin levels that are fat soluble? So vitamin A, D, E, and K, those are fat soluble vitamins. And what that means is that those are vitamins that build up in your system and you can get toxicity from. So it's important to make sure you kind of like have a really good gauge of where you need to be and how to get there with the combination of diet, hormones, etc. And you know, this is what we do all day long. It's just that so much of the information out there is very piecemeal, but in the end, the same thing prevails from forever, that we are like a human ecosystem that requires homeostasis to be able to be optimized, to, you know, reach the goals that you want to in whichever way there is. But you really need to have like the right pair of shoes to run the marathon.
I like that. Thank you. That's a great overview. And everyone, I highly recommend, I know we put the LinkedIn profiles in the chat box. We definitely recommend you connect with all the speakers, but especially on the medical, if you're curious about immunology and, you know, inflammation, please reach out to Dr. Gupta. So Celine, you are ending our panel on what do you recommend? Take it away. You're on mute.
I recommend not being on mute. Okay, so let's see. I recommend, in terms of getting, you know, being able to create trust and get things accomplished and be effective in your businesses and be influential in your businesses, the approach that I recommend for you, for your own preparation, is very much comes from some of the ideologies of consciousness. And so the depersonalization that is required when you are interacting with people is so incredibly important, because when you are triggered, or when someone else is triggered, you are basically transported to some wounded inner child version of yourself. And that version of yourself is going to rely on very primitive defense mechanisms with which to protect you. And so when you get into that mode with somebody, the whole thing is a waste of time. So I often will think to myself and say to people, but I will think to myself in my own life all the time, that teaching a dog how to sit while they're in the middle of a dog fight is pointless, because that's what it's like. And so if you can think of things from that perspective and recognize that when someone is coming at you, or when someone is triggered, you are dealing with some version of them that is not able to see what's in front of them.
So true.
It's a lot easier to depersonalize. So I spoke to I did a program recently, and one of the first women that shared was talking about how she feels like she has been called to be like this massive, spiritual leader. I mean, the way that she was talking, I was jealous. I was like, wow, I wish someone would call me that way. She was like, I've known since I was a kid, I get whispers in my ears, blah, blah, blah. And then she mentioned that she wasn't working anymore. And I said, well, why, what happened with the job? And, like your entrepreneur mentioned earlier, the whole Maslow's triangle, you can't go be the next coming of Christ if you don't have a roof over your head and you're going to die of cold. And so she said, oh, well, my boss, the way he talked to me, and I'm not going to take that anymore. So I told him what I think, because I'm strong now and I'm powerful, and I just stopped her. She said, I'm a spiritual warrior. I'm not going to let people step on my boundaries. That was the old me, but now I'm all of these other things. And I said to her, I said, oh my goodness, let me just stop you there, because if you are called, you truly believe that you're called to be this incredible, and she corrected me. She said, no, I am. I don't believe it. I am. I said, great. Then how dare you let your boss, who probably has been at the bar, from what you told me, till 10 o'clock the night before, came in, hungover, tired, stressed about COVID, stressed about this, stressed, and vomited all over you. How dare you let that disturb your serenity? How dare you let that disturb your spirit, that offering, that amazing light that you have? How dare you let somebody shit all over that? And a true spiritual warrior knows that it has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with them. And so that's how you really start to use that understanding to activate the knowing. And so when people will talk to, I will literally in my head, if someone's coming at me, I will literally in my head be thinking, oh, wow. Are you talking to me? No. You must be talking to a hair on my head. If you saw me with all my divinity and all my splendor, then you would never talk to me that way, And so you don't let it in. You don't, like I say to my girls, let it bounce off of you. Can't touch this, you don't let that in. And then you can continue to access the higher levels of attention, which are the ones that you need to navigate the situation. On the flip side, I do a really, really practical way of preparing for the other person. And so David kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm really methodical about it. So if I'm going in to talk to somebody, or if you're going in to have a conversation with someone, and it's going to be a tense conversation, you guys have different points of view, you don't want to hear what they're going to say, you ahead of time recognize that the second they get triggered, you're now going to deal with an 8-year-old. So there's no point in going there. There's no point in you becoming 8 years old and trying to defend yourself with fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. And so what do? We think about, what are the needs of this person? So I'm also a Tony Robbins coach, and we all know the 6 needs if you've done anything with Tony Robbins, right? And so what are the needs? And so if I'm going in to talk to someone who really needs certainty, as David mentioned, someone who really needs certainty from me that I might not be able to give, or really needs to feel respected. You know, that's a big one for people now that we're all like aware and trying to prove that we're not going to that we have boundaries and all those things. So respect is the big one. And so I will go into a room, or I will coach someone to go into a room knowing that those two needs, until I meet those two primal that have become primal for this person, they are not going to be open to listening to a word I say. So you go in that room, you're depersonalizing, and you're in your mind, you're thinking certainty, respect, certainty, respect, certainty, respect. And every time you want to be like, but you're an idiot, or whatever, you want to tell them what you really think, you realize I'm about to go into ego. They're already in ego. The only shot I have here to either influence, impact, or just get out of there. Because sometimes you just want to meet the need and leave. Like if you're dealing with a boss or if you're dealing with a parent, that you're not going to change them, but you are not going to go and waste all of your energy there and then be able to go put your energy where you actually have the chance of having impact and influence and connection and all those things that you are capable of doing when in the right situation.
That's beautiful. And I love how you talked about this. One thing that you said that was very near and dear to my heart is about controlling that momentum that you have in life. And I think it always starts from within. I think there's this fallacy that your external environment creates your inner environment, but it's really vice versa. It's like, again, it goes back to inflammation, or goes back to sound mind, sound body. It goes back to what you're saying, which is like, you shouldn't let any external energies dictate what gets in your way. So thank you for that. That is so assuring. And I'm glad that there's, we have this content for people to realize this. So on that note, I want to thank you all for attending this. You, Dave, Malika, and Celina for joining us. This is such a needed thing. I'll be honest with you, and I would love anyone to challenge me on the chat site. There has not been a lot of panels like this. I've never seen a venture investment business focused conference having a mindful communication. So I want to thank everyone for taking the courage to do this. Also, everyone should know we've posted some notes and the people's contact info and some specials that some of the people are doing in the chat area. I know Jake from Dave's team just posted something too, so thank you for that. So I'm going to pull up my screen. I think we're just going to, actually, you know what? It's 2:25. We're going to take a 5-minute break because we have our next speaker in 5 minutes. So everyone, thank you again. And play some music momentarily till we start again. Thanks, everyone.